welcome everyone to another edition of the Sync Up. Probably the most excited I have been leading into any episode thus far. We have two special guests this time. It's the first time we have a duo joining us. No introduction needed here. We have Jason Alexander and Peter Tilden. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for joining us, Jason.
Listen, I don't want to start, on any wrong foot. Are you equally excited about both of us, or is there sort of
I knew this was coming.
a lopsided amount of excitement?
I was waiting for Jason to say no introduction necessary.
This is on its face too.
You can. One of us needs a little bit of an introduction.
We didn't practice both introductions.
I wasn't prepared for that response, so we'll leave it. We'll leave it to the imagination.
Okay. We said we did research. We didn't do that much research.
No, it's on that note, it's a very, I think it's unique. We've had the opportunity to work with a lot of special celebrity talent over the years with Zinc. And Jason, you are really at the top of that list.
Stop. You're embarrassed.
No.
I mean, finish your thought. But
what's special, I think, about kind of when we go to Jason Alexander is we get Peter with Jason, and that duo creates a really special experience for our clients, and it stands out, and that's why we've had the opportunity to collaborate time and time again together. And I guess to kick things off, Jason, now I'll give it back to you. How did that kind of marriage come to be, that we're sitting here with not just Jason Alexander but Peter Tilden, and how did we get
happy
to this
marriage?
point?
Happy
Yes,
marriage.
happy marriage.
Yeah. Peter and I met on his radio show. I think, Peter, what, 1992 or
Seinfeld was about 1 year in.
Yeah, so about 91, 92, I was asked to go, do an interview, Seinfeld-related interview on Peter's show. And I was still fairly new to Los Angeles. I was aware of who Peter was. I had listened a couple of times, but we had never met. And I went into the studio, and we started to laugh. It was the most offbeat, well-informed, well-researched interview for a show that really nobody knew anything about at the time. And we giggled a lot. It was just a huge rapport, an instant rapport. And in one of the breaks, a commercial break on the show, because it was a morning drive show, Peter said, "Hey, if you're not doing anything, you want to go grab some breakfast after this?" And I went, "Yeah, I think I kind of do." So we went out for breakfast, and the fun continued. I mean, I was laughing, endlessly. And at the end of that conversation, Peter said, "By the way, I have your next television series. When this is done, I have your next one." And he gave me a small pitch on it. And I realized I had to hang on to this guy because it was probably going to be my next television series. And in fact, it was. But it was that chance meeting on the air where I just went, aha, I have found literally my brother from another mother. So that's how
you're making me tear. I get emotional because Jason, the part about Jason that's incredible is we had 30 plus years ago. We've been best friends since then. And getting to do stuff, I always try and create stuff so that we can work together because he's so talented. I know if I don't, I'm going to lose him to Broadway. I'm going to lose him to another series. I'm going to lose him to something. So I always have the next thing up my sleeve when one ends so that I can see this guy once a week forever.
When you hook a fish through the wrong part, you can't get it off the hook. That's Peter Tilden and me. I can't get him off the hook.
Love it. Keep that hook in. Keep that hook in. And
just have to cut the line. I have to cut the line
eventually, but not before we do some more events together. Keep the hook in. But on the event side of things, what's so nice with the relationship is that when Jason and Peter come together, it's just a free flowing conversation where a lot of folks that are in the audience or clients that are hosting, they don't really have to worry, or at least we don't have to worry from our perspective of how that show is going to go, because Peter does such a good job of driving it and Jason feeds off of that energy and vice versa. Was it instantaneous, or it took time? And do you remember the first time you had to do it kind of in a professional setting versus just as friends? Or
well, our first time really was exactly that interview. The dynamic has never changed. Peter did all the heavy lifting. Peter did all the prep. Jason came in and was charming. I mean, that's our relationship. And the only time that's ever changed, honestly, is when we've done we've created a bunch of shows. Some of them have been television shows, some of them have been videos, some of them have been live shows that began as corporate and became general entertainment. When we are constructing a show, we're sort of 50-50 partners. We're both in it together. But even on our podcast, on Really No Really, when people ask me about it, I say, this is Peter's gig and I'm going on his ride. He presented the idea. I thought it was interesting. I said, Pete, I can show up and do the recordings, but I don't think I'm going to have a lot of time to do the heavy lifting. And he said, I got it. And he does. He does all the heavy lifting regarding the business details of doing the podcast. And he does all the heavy lifting of researching our guests and then sends me the highlights so that I'm not, completely in the dark. But that has been the dynamic. He does the grunt work so that I can come in and sparkle. And the only thing I can say in return is that whenever I can, I make no bones about, if you've seen me appear as Jason Alexander and I've been funny, it's probably because of Peter Tilden. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. And how
Well,
does
I think he's pretty funny on his. I mean, the best joy I always say is when I can say something or pitch Jason something, and he goes down laughing, and we do that even in the worst of times. It always happens. Is that so? The magic of the live show and doing the corporate show is we're very cognizant of each client. I mean, I cater. What we decided early on was, you get a lot of talent of Jason's caliber, and there's not that many that everyone. When he walks in the room, it's not 6 out of 10 people know him, 10 out of 10 people know Jason, pretty much globally. And the great thing about working with Jason too is that when you're out and about or anybody sees Jason, they light up and they smile. And today, in today's world, that's a nice thing to see with all the tension out there. But we make it a point to go and talk to the companies and find out not only about what they do, but about their culture and about, does the CEO wearing Birkenstocks? Is he bringing his dog to work? Is whatever. So that a lot of talent just gets up at a show and maybe there's a shout out to the company, their name, and that's about it. Or maybe one or two things. We try and leave enough room that for somebody in the audience, they're going, oh my God, they knew about Carl in the lunchroom. And they can't believe that they're that clued into the company. Or when we interview somebody from the company, we try and find out as much about them so we can give. Jason's life is about overcoming obstacles. It's about pushing, teamwork. It's the same themes that a lot of companies want incorporated, and we can direct to that. But the best part is when Jason's playing with a CEO, we're sitting there and we give him a zinger and he goes down, the audience goes down, and they remember it. It's called leaving something on the stage. You can do jokes, you can do funny, whatever. But when you leave, you want it to resonate with that company. So they tell somebody, we saw today. Or the whole company is going, oh my gosh, he said this about Carl. So that's what we try and do. And as you can see, Jason's smirking now, because that's the moment that you love. You work for it. Jason taught me that in show business, and you can't wait for that moment,
Yeah, where it came from, and then we'll let you guys actually interview us instead of running roughshod.
No, we're taking notes. Yeah. We want to learn from the best here. That's
You'll be way more interesting than
yeah. Keep going.
Where that notion of getting sort of knowledgeable about our client came from is Peter and I, our first foray into the corporate world was an offshoot of a television show we did. We had created a show, Peter led that creation, called Bob Patterson, about a guy whose job was to be a motivational speaker in the Tony Robbins vein, but who in his personal life couldn't motivate anybody to do anything. He was completely dysfunctional. And what we found was when we did the sort of little upfront presentations of the show, what was fun is I, as Bob Patterson, would do a 2 or 3 minute motivational exercise for the television people, and they loved it. Well, when the television show crashed and burned, we met Greg Janice, our who handles all our corporate bookings. And we said, we have this vague idea about what if we did a corporate show. It was a comedy show, but we did it in the guise of a motivational seminar. And you wouldn't introduce Jason Alexander, you would introduce Donnie Clay, America's 4th leading motivational speaker. Right?
We just got the number one person we're going to pitch now, Donnie Clay.
And I would come out and I was a buffoon of a motivational speaker. But where it would all culminate is we would have set routines that we did where we could interact with the audience. But we would write the last third or quarter of the show would be Donnie specifically doing a rant about how that company could improve with ridiculous ideas. And in order to do that, we had to really understand who that company was, what they were doing, and anybody in it that was a key player. And that section of the show is what made Donnie Clay a success, because people couldn't believe that we were coming in and speaking in their jargon about their issues, their challenges, their successes, and their people in this sort of in-depth way. So when Peter and I, we left Donnie Clay behind because it was a very expensive show for us to do, and therefore it became very expensive in the market. But when we do our show now, that culture of going, we still have to know about this company. We still have to know about who the players are. We have to be able to speak a little bit in their language, because otherwise we're just a wandering minstrel show that comes in and sings our little tunes and tells our little jokes and leaves. But if you come in and say, I know what you do, I see you, I know what your little jargon is, and I know that Stephen is your CEO and that he has a dog that you all can't stand because it has horrible breath. Everybody goes, oh my God, we had an experience together. And that's what Peter means about leaving something on the stage. It's not just we came and we presented, we came and we had an experience together. And if you can do that, you've accomplished a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So it must take a tremendous amount of research that goes in it. Is there, from all the different avenues that you're involved in with TV and Broadway and comedy, it seems like, is there one harder to prepare for, or different, or different feelings, or
Of my work as an actor, you mean, or
actor? Yeah, acting, Broadway, all this stuff.
They all have challenges and they all have benefits. When you're working on a movie, it's brutal. Movies just the hours are hard, and there's not if you're the actor, there's not a ton of time to rehearse with the other actors to prepare your ideas. Movies happen very spontaneously on the acting side. They happen in a very planned and thought out way from the director side. So if you're directing, it's a lot of preparation. It can be a year of preparation to get to the 2 months of filming. As an actor, you probably come in 2 weeks before they start filming, and you're kind of using all your skills to wing it. But it's over and it's done. It's intense, but it's over and it's done. In a theater piece, the trick is you have to find that performance with this company of actors, and you have to get it every time. You're going to do it 8 times a week if you're doing it on Broadway. It has to be consistent, but it also has to be spontaneous. It has to be a living, live thing. And the thing that nobody understands is, even though I'm only working a couple of, if my showtime is 8 o'clock that night and I don't have a matinee that day, you think, well, he's only working from, gets to the theater, what, 7:30? He's done at 10:30. That's a cushy job. Your whole life is for those 3 hours. You can't speak. You can't blow out your energy. You can't party. You really can't do anything else and create that energy at night. It is a monastic experience that most people can't stand. I love it, but I now only love it for like 4 to 5 months at a shot. After that, I go, where's my life?
Yeah.
They all have challenges. For me, the directing has become more interesting than the acting, because you're just collaborating with more and more people. That's really all it is. I just get to have creative input and exchanges with more people as a director than I do as an actor. So it's more interesting to me at this moment, but it's all good. It's all
That's
fun.
amazing.
Still, I've been doing it for 50 years and I'm still having a good time.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, that's awesome. And you just wrapped, or relatively recently, right? You were kind of part of a Broadway production.
I've been directing theater since I was a teenager, but I just directed my first Broadway show, which had a lovely run this summer. And it was a limited run and intended to be. And it did really beautifully. So
Nice.
very cool.
Yes. So I think we'll jump around. I think you gave an amazing kind of compelling conversation just to how we interact with corporations and leaving them with an experience. That is kind of our top thing, and that's tremendous. And we look forward to kind of seeing how we can progress, I guess, with Really No Really, and the progression of that. How did that come to be with you two? Like, I guess, was it just a continuation of what you had already been doing for kind of groups? Like, What was that? Obviously, you mentioned Peter did a lot of the heavy lifting to start it. Was that Peter? I guess for you, like, what was the thinking there with the podcast?
I'll make it quick. COVID happened, and I had left radio after a long career in radio. It just done over, and I had signed a thing to do on TV that got shut down the day after it signed because of COVID. So it's over, and my kids are going, do a podcast, do a podcast, do a podcast, and I didn't. After coming from radio with a huge audience, I didn't want to be like a kid in feet pajamas talking to nobody. So after months of them just pummeling me with this, I started doing some research into podcasts, and I thought, rather than a podcast, I'd rather build a brand.
Mhm.
So called Jason right away and said, what do you think about this really no really concept where it's all the things that make us go, really? No, really. The implied that the first answer was BS. Because when you talk to somebody, you go, why are you in love with your wife? Really? No, really.
Yeah.
Let's get right to that part. Jason liked it. We took it to iHeart. They bought it. Then we had to do it. So we've been doing it with the most interesting people. And it's been real fun. Like I said, I get to work with him all the time. So, and we do the research, we find out, we go deep on the topic, and it usually takes us, it starts somewhere and ends up somewhere else. We never know kind of where it's going to end up. But the topics have been fascinating, and we've been lucky to grow this thing. And we're also waiting at some point to launch the next one, which is Really No Really Travel, Really No Really Tech, Really No Really Health, Really No Really Sports. There's a terrestrial version to that, and ultimately a TV version to that too. So hopefully we'll get to build out the whole brand as envisioned. And it's a fun thing to build.
Yeah, we just listened to the Festivus episode, which I probably said really no really more times than I can count. Going into like ins and out of that was fascinating to hear. So kudos to that one. That was
Yeah, on the topic of the Festivus, and I listened to the first episode, which was in regards to the space between the stalls, and I guess they're both Seinfeld, created topics. Jason, would you say it surprises you now we're 25 years kind of removed from the last episode of Seinfeld, that even in kind of the changing times of technology and some of the stuff that didn't exactly correlate, that Seinfeld is still so ingrained in everyone's day of, life, like the Seinfeldisms that Will and I talk about pretty much on a weekly basis? Does that kind of surprise you at this point?
Anything that points to Seinfeld as successful surprises me. Not because I always thought it was extraordinary and fun and great, but I mean, the story I often tell as an anecdote is when we did Jerry and I were at the after party, and he said, "What do you think? Do you think that we'll get on the air? Do you think we'll succeed?" I said, "No," and he said, "You don't think we're good?" And I said, "No, that's the problem. I do think we're good. This show is designed." I was 30 years old at the time. I said, "This show is designed for young men between maybe 18 and 35 years old, probably who live in a city, to watch. That's your audience. They don't watch TV. So they watch sports, but they don't watch sitcoms. The number one sitcom in America when we did our pilot was Alf. That was not our audience. So I am always surprised that we found a place, that we grew, that we became the thing we are. And particularly, I look at the shows when I look at them and I go, this is a 20th century show. It's the equivalent to me of watching I Love Lucy. I go, how is that still a thing that people are watching? But I do know, whether I understand it or not, I know that it's a reality. I know that young people, college students in particular, are coming up and going, "Oh man, you're George. I love the show," and they're just finding it now. So somehow it is still resonating with them as a fun experience, and we're thrilled. But I don't think any of us understand why or how that happened.
Yeah. Do you still love when you get those people stopping you and asking, like, going in on the Seinfeld stuff, or do you wish it kind of goes?
It's not a question of love or not love it. One of the guys that I only know in my life, and he was a hero of mine since childhood, and I only know him and have a relationship with him because of Peter, is Bill Shatner. And Bill Shatner was given to me as a birthday present years ago. And he took it upon himself to tell me how horrible he was with Star Trek fans because he resented the success of Star Trek. He didn't want to be labeled by it. He didn't want to be pigeonholed. He didn't want to, he didn't want his legacy to be Kirk. It wasn't even a show that was successful for him initially. But he said to me, you have to understand that the thing that you're doing is more than just a TV show. It's more than just a paycheck. These people are having an experience. You are giving them something at a time when they need something very badly. And that's been shown to be true because, as Peter and I often talk about in our corporate show when we talk about Seinfeld, it's not that I'm glad the show is still out there and there's a paycheck that comes every now and then. It's not that. It's the people who I meet or who write to me to say, I was going through really terrible times. I lost a child, or I lost a parent, or I was out of work, or my marriage was failing, or I was a soldier serving overseas and engaged in horrific things. And I felt like my humanity and joy were slipping away, and I would watch your show and I would laugh, and my humanity and joy would come back to me. Thank you for doing that for me. Well, you don't then say, enough about Seinfeld. You don't do that. You say, I am so glad that something I was part of that was so successful for me personally was so meaningful to you. That is phenomenal. And thank you for sharing that with me. And it's taken something that is really a selfish endeavor. It was a gig. It paid me well. I had fun doing it. Apparently, I was okay in it. That's all selfish stuff. When it actually shows up to be of service, of comfort to other people, you suddenly are elevated from an actor to someone who is serving their community. And Peter knows that was the thing my mother always wanted from me. She said, I don't know what you're going to do, but try and live a life of service to other people. And for the longest time, I didn't think my chosen career was doing that. Seinfeld is the thing that turned me around.
That's amazing to hear. And I think that's why we're doing this podcast, because the amount of events we do with you, we never really get to hear that side of it, which is like all the more meaning to it when working with you, just hearing that side of what it means. Because I think Zach and I share those same sentiments, like watching Seinfeld with our families and having those memories, super special to us.
It takes you away from whatever. It's an escape, right? Like no matter kind of what you're currently going through, it's that, that 30-minute episode. It's just, you're in it, you're laughing, you're not thinking about other things. On the topic of,
so he didn't clear this question with me. He said he had one question he wanted to add to the group. I was like, Zach, we got it.
So I have something.
He's going off the rails now.
This is for Jason, for Peter, for Will. So I had a scenario this morning, which I don't think it's ever been covered on Seinfeld. And I wanted to bring it up to the group to hear how everyone's reaction. I think it'll be somewhat split. So we have someone, a cleaning person that comes into our house once a week. I am relatively messy. She knows that. She's worked with us for many years. I left in my pocket my wallet, and she proceeded to wash my pants. And bear in mind, I wore these pants last night, not these particular, but so they were right next to my bed. It was a very quick transition, and she washed it. Now, my wife at home, Natalie, was like, why did you leave them in? And I said, I always leave them in. She needs to know that, like, just check the pants. I wanted to bring it to the group. Who's at fault? Is that me for not taking it out of my pants, or is that her for knowing that I would be likely to do that and not checking?
Or would this episode be on the cutting room floor if it came?
Are you asking if your wife is at fault or if you're cleaning woman?
The cleaning person.
Is she going to watch this podcast?
Yes. She's not going to watch the podcast.
Peter, would you like to?
Oh, you want me to go? You want me to go first?
Well, I have the right answer, so I figured.
I also have the right answer. So here's the deal. In my life with Jason, in my life at home, it's assumed it's my fault. It's your fault. There's not even a question about it.
Yeah.
Are they your pants? Yes, they're your pants. Guess what? You're the keeper of the pants. So anything that happens to those pants are related to you. If you wanted to make sure it didn't get washed, you should have. How hard is it to take your wallet out of your pants, sir? How hard is that? Really? Is that a big deal?
It's simple.
This poor woman has to come in and clean your stuff. Okay, put your underwear, your pants. She's got to pick up your pants and carry them. I don't know how toxic they are. I don't know how many days you're wearing those things. So I think it's basically if I'm the judge, there's not even a question about it. It's so your fault, and worse if you even ask the question of is it your fault?
Yeah, on a podcast with Jason Alexander Pillage, but that's neither here nor there.
Jason.
Well, I agree with Peter, but for a different reason. It is your fault, but it's your fault because you never, we just hire someone to work in our home and we say, yeah, clean.
Yeah.
We don't have, now in my house, because of whom I married, things are understood down to an infinitesimal level. So our wonderful Alma, our wonderful housekeeper, knows if I didn't put it in the hamper, don't clean it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things in the hamper, they get washed. If it's lying on the floor, if it's lying on the end of the bed, if it's draped over a chair, it's on me. Don't wash it. But if you didn't have that conversation with the person that you're working with, that's your fault. You're the boss.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the group too. Your fault, but
Yeah.
it was a good question to be asked. So it's good. And I think we probably have time just for a little bit more, but we're so appreciative. Kind of.
Is it a corporate question or a cleaning question?
So we're gonna stick with the cleaning. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, all right. We'll go out on that.
Yeah, we're gonna. So the one thing we're really excited about for the future is the really no really kind of on the road or what that can look like. So if you can just leave us with kind of what you envision or think that podcast live looks like, it's something that we really want to lean into. Would love to kind of get your thoughts of what that potentially could look like from both your perspectives.
I'll start, and Peter, you bring it home. So if you're not familiar with our podcast, what it does is it starts with a small thing that Peter and I hear about that boggles our mind. I'll give you for instance. I had heard that a German ballet company had created a new ballet, and the local critic gave it a terrible, scathing review, so that when the head of the ballet next met that critic, he smeared feces on the critic. And I went, really? Really?
Yeah.
How does that, right? So that became an episode with Howie Mandel about what judging and criticism is all about. What's your responsibility when you are in a position to judge or criticize? How has it affected people's lives for better or worse? How has it affected your lives? How do you assess things like talent and merit? It became a very serious conversation with a very funny man. So the general idea of our podcast is to take something that's a little bit unknowable, sort of like odd, unusual, and to not only explore it for its comedic value, but to elevate it into a conversation that is more than an anecdote, that's about something everybody deals with and goes, okay, yeah, that's interesting. How does judgment and criticism affect my life? And no matter what the topic is. So with that set up, Peter, how do we do it corporately?
So
Yeah.
corporately, we would find whoever the corporation of the multitude you're going to give us this year. We research that and come up with a really reverse engineer that to the company. So it's a laugh for the audience, and it's also awareness. We come out, begin the podcast, the corporate podcast, where I interview Jason about his life and how, again, those themes would play in: overcoming obstacles, embracing change, teamwork. Then we bring up the COO, the CEO, the vice president of sales, whoever they want us to interview, who's the big star of the show. And we guide our questions so it covers the things that this person would cover in a dry, boring presentation to their company in, like Jason said before, in an engaging way. So it really resonates with the audience because they see this guy in a different light. There's some humor there. And then we close it out, of course, with a Q&A. And of course, whatever the first question is for the corporate guy, Jason's going to answer, not let the corporate guy answer. So they get that. They get the experience of picking who they want out of their audience to be involved in the show with questions. They get to see their guy in a different light and hopefully make them more compelling than a speech to the audience about where they get. We've lived through all of those, and Jason and I are always sitting backstage and you go, wow, we got to follow this, because it's some guy talking about, I'm really proud this year, and we broke all the sales records, and we've done all, and you look in the audience and everybody's, they're nodding off. This way, they're actually engaged. They're looking at Jason Alexander.
If we find out in our research that for like the CEO really likes French bulldogs, right? Aside from everything else, one of our thing will be, why is it you prefer animals who in their natural stance are showing you their butthole?
And not necessarily
why would you prefer a dog that is more discreet, that has its tail down? Why? What is it about you?
And maybe not that one is the leading example.
Yeah, we'll get to chuckles. That's
but
awesome.
we'll find the things that will make the CEO really comfortable, and that we'll cover his corporate stuff.
Skydiver, really?
Yeah.
Really? Do your investors know that you're a Skydiver? Who's the next in command?
Yeah, I was going to say. So if you hit a car on the way down, looking out at the audience, you don't have to come out, but just nod and cough. Who are the two that are going to be vying for the job? You know, that type of stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah, and we got a small glimpse of it virtually, and if it delivers just half amount as it does virtually, everyone's in for a treat. And like I said, when you get the duo of both Jason and Peter, you don't have to worry about anything. You just give them the keys and they drive it.
And by the way, we go deep. We don't let any. We always ask questions. It begs the question, like if you're watching this right now, if you're anybody watching this, did the sconces come first and they sat under them, or did they sit down and somebody said we got to put sconces over you? It's between two sconces.
Yeah. So.
And by the way, if you lit the bulbs, it would look like you're both thinking.
Yeah, we had a thing. Yeah.
We're not thinking.
By the way, they should go on and off. They should go on and off.
You know, we don't think. From listening.
We spent like months coming up with the best podcast name. We just got rebranded in a second. But everybody said hello. Jay's like, between two sconces. It's like, we can go with that. So that's awesome. We'll have you in studio next time. You can be under sconce with us.
Not in that studio. I'm not traveling for that.
No, not at all. Well, thank you so much. Again, appreciate the time. Appreciate all the events we were able to collaborate with and hearing some of your stories. Really resonated and hit us. And for my co-host here.
Yeah, well, I'll sign us out. Thank you again, Peter, Jason. It was a real treat. In 2024, let's bring Really No Really to the stage, and we look forward to it.
And if you want a TV show and use the episode with the wallet, you have approval.
That I don't need. I don't need rights to.
Yeah.
Oh, people are scrambling to write that. Oh, I can hear the people writing that.
Yeah. It's a gift. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Appreciate it.